Welcome back to the Talking Archive, and our conversation continues now with John F. Schneider, proprietor and writer of theradiohistorian.org. Any other cool stories that were like just too good to be true, but they're actually real?
Oh my gosh. I'm sure I know lots of them, and I would have to think on that a little bit for them to come to my head. I'm not right at the tip of my tongue at the moment.
Well, that's okay.
There are thousands of wonderful stories about things that happened in those days, as well as great stories of practical jokes that they would pull behind the scenes. Like, the newsman is live on the air, standing in the studio in front of a microphone, reading the newscast, and someone slips in behind him, unbuckles his pants, and drops his trousers. And, he has to keep on reading and not react. Or the one where, I guess it's a true story, where somebody in the same situation set their script on fire. Or the programs where in the live drama shows, like a soap opera or something, the script would be in 20 sheets of paper in your hand, and you would read the script, read your lines, and then when that page is done, you'd just let it drop on the floor and go to the next page and so forth. They didn't want the sound of page turning. But then, it was a problem when an actor, in the process of dropping it, would drop his entire script on the floor, and the pages would go all over the floor, and he's in the middle of a live broadcast, and he doesn't know what the next lines are. So he or she would just have to ad-lib their way through the rest of the program, or being guided by the other actors. You couldn't just say, cut, let's go do that scene over. Everything is live, so you had to respond as best you could to situations whenever things went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it showed how much talent these people had. I remember there was an episode of The Honeymooners where Jackie Gleason picks up the phone and it's still ringing even after he picks the phone up, so he just pounds the wall and then the phone stops.
Yeah. Synchronizing the live sound effects with the actors, where the actor would say hello, and then the phone would ring. The sound effects man wasn't quite on cue. Or there's the stories are coming to my mind as we speak. But one of the great old radio shows was The Inner Sanctum, which Hiram Brown was the producer of that, and Inner Sanctum Mysteries, and it started every program with the opening of a creaking door. And the sound effects people had worked for years to find the perfect creaking door that made just the right sound and use that door just for that program. But one of the maintenance people, not realizing that was that purpose, saw this effects door and decided to oil the hinges. So the next broadcast, they open the creaking door, but it doesn't creak anymore. And so the announcer is having to do something, makes the sound of creaking door vocally to try and create the sound effect. So many things that could go wrong, and it was all live radio or microphones that would pick up people saying things that weren't meant to be broadcast.
Oh. And back then you had no 7 or 10 second delay to dump it.
No, nothing. No, it was on the air nationwide to 60 radio stations.
Oh, goodness. Do you remember what year the delay came out as far as radio is concerned, since you were in radio equipment sales and stuff?
I would say sometime in the early to mid-'60s.
Oh, okay.
Talk radio was starting to become more common. The original way it was done was if you had two reel-to-reel machines that were side by side in adjacent racks, let's say, or adjacent cabinets, is the tape would be recorded on one machine, and then the tape would run across the space to the other machine where the take-up reel was. So delay time was determined by the physical distance between the record and playback heads. Later, they figured out how to do that with a tape cartridge machine, where they'd put in a tape cartridge that had 7 seconds of tape in it, and then they would reverse the positions of the playback and record heads. So it would record, would go 7 seconds through the tape cartridge, and then come back to the playback head. And that worked fine unless the tape broke or the splice in the tape became defective or damaged, in which case you'd hear a blip every 7 seconds. And then, of course, now we have, it's all digital and it's all hands-free.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's certain types of delays. There's ones that have up to 30 seconds where if you dump it, it takes off 10 seconds, and so you still have 20 seconds to work with. But then there's others that are just 7 seconds. A show that I board operated in the morning, somebody forgot to bleep the member of Congress who was saying the S word. And so we dumped it once. It's like, okay. And then the guy says the S word again. It's like, I couldn't dump it the second time because delay hadn't built up. Because the way delay now works is that it builds up when a host pauses. And so the host kept just talking and talking and talking. And so we didn't have a chance for the delay to build up. We didn't get fined, but still, it was just like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that happened. I said, can we next time have a delay that actually doesn't take away all the delay? So that way, in case we have to double dump, we don't have to worry about it.
Well, the original ones, they would just, if they dumped, it would just cut the audio out for up to 7 seconds. Somebody would say something that they didn't want to be broadcast, so either they would just cut the audio and you'd have 7 seconds of silence, or there would be an audio tone or something that it would switch to.
Wow.
But, the audience knew that something had been cut.
These days, it's kind of like sometimes a caller gets dumped so quickly for saying something bad that it's like the caller never existed to the audience listening. But then other times, like you said, it kind of has this weird jump cut type of feature. But it's just I remember just some of the craziest. And then sometimes we don't even catch it because the person said the words so nonchalantly. Like I remember about, 20 years ago, I was training with a national talk show, and the host is mentioning American soldiers showing pictures of J-Lo's big A, and he says the full word, and he also says the V word. But then a caller just calls up and says, "Oh, Mike, they're just a bunch of dumb SHITs." And Mike would always come in each break to talk to the board operator and the producer, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear what the caller said? Huh? Like, what are you talking about?" I was like, "He said dumb." No, we didn't hear that. And so the caller was just so nonchalant about it that nobody heard it except for the host himself. Because usually when a caller says something, a swear word or something, they're so obnoxious about it, you can't help but hear it. But this caller was just so, shooting the breeze that I was like, oh my goodness, I did not hear it myself either. And there are 3 of us in the studio did not hear it, but the host somehow did. Now, we joked that the listeners would probably be more upset about the host saying the V word and the A word than some caller saying the S word. But
right.
And they didn't get in trouble, but still, just when they play the show back, they just erased the part where the caller said the bad word. But it was just
and then came Howard Stern, and it all just went through and nobody cared.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Stern pretty much, pushed the envelope and went off the edge, if you will.
Yeah, and the station got fined a few times by the FCC for the ratings. We made more money with his program. We're happy to pay the fine.
Exactly, and it definitely did open up a lot of more words to be allowed to be said on the air than beforehand. And so there's words that I was like, oh, I don't have to bleep that anymore because I used to have to. So it's just kind of weird sometimes. Sometimes I'll still bleep it just out of habit because for so long you couldn't say the word.
Well, if you go back to the 30s and 40s, the networks wouldn't allow commercials for hemorrhoid treatments and anything that they thought would upset a few people in the audience.
Well, I heard that Jack Paar got suspended, or there was some sort of controversy when he said the word water closet when he was hosting The Tonight Show. And so I think he was off for like a day or two because he said the word water closet. I think another one was where he mentioned his daughter getting a training bra that may have also been something controversial or something like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. Like, really? But now it's like no big deal, especially the word, or he couldn't say the word pregnant. I remember watching one of the original Mr. Belvedere movies with Clifton Webb, and the family that he was the butler for said, yes, my wife is with child.
Right, or expecting.
Expecting, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't say the word pregnant.
Mm-mm.
And in TV, that goes back to the time when any bedroom scenes, the husband and wife always had separate beds and full neck-to-foot pajamas.
That's right, yeah. In fact, I remember seeing the movie A Christmas Story, and the parents in that movie, even though it was made in 1983, their bedroom, the parents had separate beds, so it really was a period piece, if you will, that really captured the moment of the 1940s when it took place, which I thought was pretty cool. I think the first TV show where the couple actually slept in the same bed was Mike and Carol Brady on the Brady Bunch, which people don't think about cutting edge. If you think about the Brady Bunch, you think about All in the Family, which, was developed by Norman Lear, who we just lost. And, of course, that was also the first show that had a flushing toilet. And the audience was laughing about it. And but with your over 3,500 photographs, how did you obtain the photographs? And are there any photos that you're currently looking for that you don't have in your collection?
Well, the early ones, I would meet broadcasters or retired broadcasters who had their collection, their private collection. Usually, it's engineers. The radio stations, anything old, get it out of here. We need the file space. Dump it. We don't care about our history. The engineers are the ones who are pack rats, and they will save anything. And they rescued photographs out of the dumpster and took them home and kept them. And in many cases, I was able to copy them on a 35 millimeter film with a photo stand that I had, and then later scanned collections by others. And then when eBay first started, I started seriously buying photographs online through eBay. One of the interesting things that has happened in the decline of the newspaper business is that the big newspapers that had photograph archives that went back 50, 60, 70, or even 100 years, and they had them all cataloged, original prints in file cabinets that took up large rooms or small warehouses, and they decided to sell those off as a way to raise cash to keep the paper running. And that started happening in about 2009, 2010. And a lot of those photographs went up on eBay, and especially in the beginning of that, before, when the best stuff was up and not too many people were aware of it, I was lucky to make a lot of very good collection photograph purchases. Stuff that had been hidden in file cabinets for 50 or more years suddenly popped up, and it's first time it's been seen since it was published in some newspaper.
That's great. It's interesting. I'm last 8 years or so, I've been working on a book about Jack Barry, and he was in radio during his early days. And his widow Patty, she has let me use a couple pictures from her own personal collection. A couple of the pictures I've never seen before on eBay or anywhere. It's him and Joe DiMaggio, as well as Sugar Ray Robinson on the Joe DiMaggio radio show, which was on in the early 50s. Eminem's Mars Company sponsored the radio show, and then when it went to TV, it was Lionel Trains that was the sponsor. And there's even one episode of the TV show on YouTube, and it was just so cool seeing Jack with Joe DiMaggio and Sugar Ray Robinson. I mean, like, I didn't even know those two guys had even met each other, and just to see those old photographs, just one of those. I mean, and then for your website to have all those pictures there is just amazing. So again, the website is theradiohistorian.org, And we're talking with John F. Schneider, who's the proprietor of that website. He's got lots of great articles on there. Also, you've got Jim Hilliker, who writes articles about LA radio. Tell us about some of the stuff that Jim writes as well, and what type of stuff he has in his collection on the website.
Well, Jim has been writing for many years and researching Los Angeles area radio history, and particularly some of the earliest broadcasting activities in the LA basin going back to the 20s and 30s. And he and I started collaborating. I had obviously had the San Francisco history. He had the Los Angeles history. And for 25 years that I lived in Seattle, I collected and wrote a lot about Seattle history. So the site originally started just being a San Francisco radio history site and has expanded to national, but with big emphasis on broadcasting on the Pacific Coast. So Jim's material added to mine has helped round out those stories by adding a lot of his research and history on Southern California radio to the information I already had.
So your two books that you have online available at the website, one is Images of America, Bay Area Radio, and the other is Images of America, Seattle Radio. And I encourage people to purchase those two books. I'm looking forward to reading them myself. I haven't purchased them yet, but I'm going to. And John F. Schneider, thank you for coming with us. Anything you want to add to conclude the interview?
Yeah, well, one question you asked that I didn't answer is what photographs have I not seen that I would love to see? You mentioned the NBC radio studio building in Hollywood that was demolished in the early 60s, and I have lots of wonderful black and white photographs of that building. I have none in color, and one of the things I've done, in addition to the two books you mentioned, is I publish a calendar every year, and I've done it for 10 years now, with each page featuring a photograph from my collection that I have cleaned up and colorized. So it looks like a modern photograph instead of something out of a 1930s radio studio. And so it's important to know what the colors were in a lot of these older photographs, and sometimes that's hard or impossible to know. Mm-hmm. The one thing I have never seen is in that NBC building, in the main lobby above the master control windows, was a giant painted mural representative of broadcasting that was, I think, 2 stories tall. Mm. And I have never seen a color photograph of that, and would love to see that and be able to reproduce the scenes of that room and that mural in color. Somebody somewhere must have taken a Kodachrome photograph of the lobby of that building, but I have yet to find it, and people I've talked to, nobody else has ever seen one. Mm. So it must be out there somewhere, and we're still looking.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm wondering, kind of jogging my brain right over here, if there's somebody who might have remembered some of the color schemes having gone there themselves to tell you what it might be as well. Although, again, you said it would be best to have an actual color photograph because it's easy to kind of forget or misplace the color scheme where it was and all that stuff.
One of the things that NBC did when they had buildings with multiple studios, each studio would have its own color scheme. So one would be done in green, one would be done in buff colors or earth colors, another would be done in blues. So each studio scene in a black and white photograph, you miss all of that. And it'd be wonderful. In some cases, they've at least published they have a black and white picture and they would describe the colors. This studio was done in 2 shades. That's helpful to be able to recreate what it looked like. If you were to walk in, transport yourself back 50 years and walk into that studio.
Well, I hope you get those photographs soon.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate you helping me get that one little word out.
You got it. And also, do you have any of your interviews with those you did get audio interviews with on your website also?
They are on my website. There is a page of audio.
Perfect.
So you'll find there's a page for articles by myself and others. There's a page for photographs. There's a page for publications, and there's a page for audio. So if you get into that audio, my interviews that I did, a couple of interviews that I did in the 70s are on there, and a lot of recordings of the San Francisco local radio programs that we talked about.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Josh.
We've been, again, talking with John F. Schneider, writer and proprietor at theradiohistorian.org. Check it out right now. Buy his 2 books. And by the way, if you want to check out our website on Instagram, just click on JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for frequent updates and new interviews. And until next time, keep your mind on the things above, and as you hit that open road, don't be a slow-down spectator.